Ugh, if I could just get this drill together to go this way. I don't know. Oh, hey, hey, welcome. I've got a couple books for you today. I was just trying to figure out how to get this drill together. My goal today was to learn how to stitch a circuit board. Stitching a circuit board. Well, that's something that Essie, the lead character in Stitching Snow, knows how to do. She fixes keyboards and circuit boards and she calls it stitching. She stitches together drones. She's a technological geek. So Stitching Snow is the science fiction retelling of the story Snow White. Now, let me tell you something. She is not your mother's or your grandmother's Snow White. Essie is a 17-year-old girl, and she lives by herself on a planet far away called Thanda. That's right. And she is responsible for the upkeep and the care of some mining drones that help protect the miners on this planet. And they are mining a very precious substance. And do you want to guess how many drones she's responsible for? That's right, 7. So she does this, and in her spare time, she does cage fighting. There are some very brutal and violent scenes in the book, but she just is getting by. And then one day, out of the sky, in his shuttle comes crashing a young man by the name of Dane. Now, Dane is handsome, but he doesn't have any really effect on her. Not so much. So Dane says he's looking for treasure, but she's automatically very suspicious of him, and she keeps an eye out on him. And all of a sudden, one day, she falls to the ground, she gets knocked out, and he kidnaps her. And she comes awake on his shuttle, and she's furious that she allowed him to, that she got vulnerable and into this position of being kidnapped. So Dane says, yep, you're the treasure princess. He knows that she is not who she says she is, that she is actually a princess. And we find out that she is Princess Snow from the planet Windsong. Now, if you know the story of Snow White, you also know that she wasn't kidnapped. She ran away. She has wanted to hide herself, and she has since the age of 9. So as they get to know each other, first of all, they're fighting and there's just a lot of animosity there. But as she gets to know him, she learns that the only reason he kidnapped her and wants to take her back is because he wants to rescue his dad. His dad is a political prisoner in Windsong. So that's a story. As time goes by, she realizes that maybe it's the most responsible thing to do is to go back and to take care of, the things that have gone wrong. For example, dealing with her stepmother and dealing with her father. There's some really grown-up issues in this book. At one point, she is almost assaulted. And yet there's a lot of humor in this book too. It was just a really great book. I couldn't put it down. There's a lot of lessons in here. And some books, the author tries to write the heroine to be just really super strong, and it's like they're doing it on purpose. I didn't feel that in this book. I just felt like she was a strong character. And there were times when she was weak too, and Dane steps in to help her. Another thing I like about this book is that there's just a whole lot of humor. So on one page, you might have some shocking violence. On the other page, there's humor. And it's just a really smartly written book. The woman that wrote it is a calculus teacher. And you would think maybe that wouldn't translate to being a great page-turning novel, but it is. I mean, she just did a superb job. I love fairy tales anyway. I love all fairy tales. My favorite units of the year to teach are fairy tales. And yeah, so I really thought that this was a great retelling. Even if you don't like science fiction, I think that you would like this book. It's just really awesome. So I hope you read it. And this is for my 8th, 9th grade students and on up too, just because of the themes and some of the scenes in here are, kind of, violent and sexual. So I think this would be great for 8th graders on up. That's Stitching Snow. My next book, we're going to take a little trip. It is a book for my middle schoolers and maybe my fifth graders as well. This is called The Phantom Tollbooth. I don't know how many of you have ever read this. Now, for those of you that don't know, a toll booth is, in some roads in the back east, when you drive across the road, you have to pay a fine to drive on that road. It helps with the taxes and upkeep. So a toll booth is it's the little house thing at the beginning of that road, and you would pay him. So here's our toll. Here's some coins for you. And here's some toll for me, and I hope that we'll get back. We have enough toll to get back. So the Phantom Toll Booth is about a young man named Milo. And this was written in the 60s, but he could be any one of you today. So Milo is a young man, and he's bored. He's bored of school. He's bored of life. Everything is boring. He doesn't want to learn anymore. This is so boring. And he's walking home alone one day, and he doesn't even notice what's around him. It's so boring. And he goes into his apartment. I don't know where his parents are. They're not there. But he looks around at all the things he owns, and it just bores him. His games, his toys. You ever do that? You ever go home and look around your room and say, there's nothing to do and I'm so bored? But in the corner of his room, there's a package, and it's addressed to him. And he opens it up, and inside there is this small toll booth, probably about Milo's size. And there's this highway that rolls out. He can roll out a highway like it's a rug. And there's this Milo-sized car. And there are signs and his toll. So what the heck? He assembles it all together following the directions. He gets in the car. And he drives along the highway that he's laid out, and he pays his toll at the toll booth, and he drives through. And as soon as he drives through, all of it disappears, and he's in another land. And this land is just the beginning of a whole bunch of adventure. I mean, there's just so many places. I can't even begin to tell you everything about it. The first place he stops is the doldrums, which is a very old-fashioned word meaning a state of mind where you're just really bored and you have no energy or no desire to do anything. And he seems like forever in the doldrums where you're not allowed to do anything and you're not allowed to think. And the only way to get yourself out is by thinking. So he starts thinking, and he gets himself out of the doldrums. And then he ends up at a city called Dictionopolis, where they're very into words. And he learns in Dictionopolis that years ago there was this great war between these two brothers. One of them thought words was more important. One of them thought numbers was more important. The one who thought numbers was more important has a city called Digitopolis. And there's been fighting and confusion ever since, because along in this city, there used to be two younger princesses. One was called Rhyme, one was called Reason. And they dispelled wisdom to the city. But since the two brothers of Dictionopolis and Digitopolis, who were the king's sons, by the way, so they were princes, since they got into power and they started fighting, they just banished the princesses, because the princesses wouldn't tell which was more important, words or numbers. So Milo takes up this quest that he's going to bring the princesses back. And along the way, he makes some friends. He makes a friend of a dog, and you see the dog on the cover. And the dog is named Talk, but he goes tick, 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 tick. And the dog is a very smart, wise dog. He's a watchdog. And he meets another guy who's a giant bug, and he's named the Humbug. And they go with him through his adventures throughout, this land until he can get to the castle in the air where the princesses are. There's just so many places. There's a place called Reality, I think, which most matches where Milo's actually from, where people just look down all the time and they don't look up and they don't notice anything. There's a place where a conductor is conducting a symphony, but instead of music, it's colors. And he conducts a symphony for the sun to rise every day and to set. And Milo, when the guy goes to sleep, Milo sneaks in and conducts a symphony to some really funny results. So there's a lot of wordplay in this book, a lot of puns, and it might lose some of you, some of the puns, but 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 as he goes through these lands, there's just so many adventures, and who of us hasn't dreamed of going to another world or going to another land? I think that's what really got me excited when I started reading this book. So I do recommend this book for you. It's called The Phantom Tollbooth, and one of the reasons I chose it is because my daughter just loved this book. It's still on her bookshelf. I got it from her bookshelf, and I had never read it, so I wondered why she had loved this book so much. So we've got Stitching Snow and The Phantom Tollbooth. Those are great books. You will lose yourself in them, I guarantee you. And until next time.